We've learned about all of the details we have to pay attention to when we format the reference for each source. Now we can think about how we put the references together in the references section. To help reduce confusion, I call the information about each source a reference entry, and I refer to the section as the references or the references section. The references section helps the reader locate the sources cited in the body of the paper, so it should include an entry for each of the articles cited in the paper. Given that the reference entry is a companion to the citation, each entry should have a corresponding citation in the paper. The heading for this section is the word references. The section itself is included after the last section of the body of the paper. That means it follows the discussion and research reports and can also be after the method for a proposal. The section always starts on a new page, and the heading is on the first line of the page. One thing I noticed in a lot of student papers is the headings that are supposed to be on the first line of the page are often lower. A little lower or a lot lower. The easiest way to keep that from happening is to use the Microsoft Word tools to insert a page break in the text instead of hitting the enter button until the heading looks like it's at the top of the page. More specifically, to do that, delete any extra lines so your heading is below the text on the page before it should be. For the references, that means you'd have the references heading on the same page as the procedure or the discussion. Then click right before the first letter of the heading. So in this case, your cursor is before the letter R. After that, you'll select the Insert menu in the options at the top of the document screen and click Page Break to the left on that menu. That will move the line to the top of the next page. When we compile the reference entries for the references section, they're organized in alphabetical order by the last name of the first author. Remember that the entry itself always keeps the author's names in the same order they appear on the article. We don't rearrange them there. This slide includes a few examples of letter-by-letter alphabetization. I know you know how to put things in alphabetical order, but the phrase letter by letter sometimes makes it seem more complicated than it is. There are two things to note about the formatting for this section. First, that the entire section is double-spaced. And second, that each entry is formatted with a hanging indent. In other words, the top line of each entry starts at the left margin, and the lines after that are to the right of the margin just a little bit. Double spacing seems like it should be relatively straightforward. Microsoft makes it a little bit less so though, because the default settings in Word automatically add extra space between paragraphs, which means it's not all double spaced. The good news is it's relatively easy to take out. Start by selecting all of the text in the document. Easiest way to do that is to hold down the Control key and the A key at the same time. The Home menu at the top of the document includes a section labeled Paragraph that includes a button to set the spacing. You can use that menu to select 2.0 to double space the document. Some versions of Word also have the options I circled at the bottom of the spacing menu. If there isn't any extra space between paragraphs, the option changes to add space. So if you see the option to remove it, you want to select that. If you don't have any options about paragraph spacing in the line spacing menu, you can also remove it by selecting the Layout menu in Microsoft Word and finding the section labeled Spacing. It's circled in this slide. The number next to before and after should be 0. If that space is blank, you can type a 0 in the box and press Enter. It might stay blank if the program thinks there's some hidden spacing information, but as long as you have all of the text selected and tell it to make the spacing 0, it seems to work. Microsoft Word might make some things a little tricky, but it makes formatting the hanging indent pretty easy. We just have to highlight all of our references and then hold down the Control key while we press the T key. You might need to take out some extra spaces if you started by clicking on the Enter line and then using a tab to indent the next line. Manually creating the hanging indent with the extra line breaks and tabs that way is a lot more work, and it creates the potential for errors. Aside from the chance that part of the text or an entire line can accidentally get deleted, Microsoft Word tends to think words at the beginning of a line need to be capitalized, and that's not always right for APA style. Compared to writing the entries, compiling the references section might seem fairly easy. In terms of the content, the important part is making sure all of the sources are included and that you don't accidentally include a source that's not cited. And you can make sure they're in alphabetical order. The features in Microsoft Word make some parts of the formatting easier and make it a little bit more work in some cases, but once you get used to it, even the extra work isn't too bad.